It's been a wonderful week. God has been good. Blessed me all through the week. The thought that I had in mind actually came from Wednesday night. Over the last several months, we've been going through the book of Romans, and Romans is probably one of my favorite scriptures. Favorite chapters, favorite books in the Bible that I have. It's kind of always go back to the book. A lot of times when I start out with a thought or try to figure out what it is that the Lord has wanted me to share, I always seem like I always start out in Romans, and then I kind of go down a rabbit hole from there. Over the last few weeks, I've got to listen to Richard teach out of Romans, and I've really enjoyed listening to him share his knowledge and what the Lord has given him to bring forth on Wednesday. And just like always, I always learn a lot. No matter how many times I read something, when I sit and listen to someone share what the Lord has given them, the Lord always brings out something different. But this thought I've got comes from Romans chapter 7, and it starts from verse 14 through 24. And Paul's a hard man to understand. And I truly think that Paul probably had ADHD. He would begin a thought, and then he would start 6 other thoughts, and then about 20 thoughts later, he would finish the first thought with a question, and he really never finished his first thought. And so, he was so smart, and I think he sometimes had a hard time trying to relate or relay what God was giving to him. But right here in these verses, he's struggling with sin and struggling with the sin nature and struggling with the law and grace, and that's kind of what I want to hit on. It starts here in verse 14. It says, we know that the law is Scripture, but I am unscriptural, sold as a slave to sin. Now this is kind of where he kind of gets lost into this thought here. It says, I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. Then if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. It says, I am as it is, it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. It says, for I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is in my sinful nature. For I had this desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. It says, for I do not do the good I want to do, but evil I do not want to do. This keeps on doing. It says, now, if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer who I do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. It says, so I find the law at work. Although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For the inner being I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind, making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within me. What a wretched man I am, whose will rescue me from this body that is subject to death. And I just pray that I can hide behind the cross and that God's word can come forth in this message. Nothing that I can say. A little over 10 years ago, maybe probably later on, I had a doctor's appointment. I was getting off. It was a new doctor I was going to. And I was getting off from the firehouse, and I had planned on going home and changing and doing all that before I had to go to the doctor. But as usual, a run came in, and I couldn't make it home to change, so I had to go to the doctor in my uniform. And like I said, this was a new doctor. I was unaware of where I was going or how to get to where I was going. I just kind of knew a general direction. And I had to go through a neighborhood to get to this doctor's office. And going through this neighborhood, I was driving down the main thoroughfare in the neighborhood, and I got lost, and I ended up going up and down this street, I would say at least 6, maybe 10 times, trying to figure out where I was going. And along about my last trip up through there, this officer comes out of nowhere, pulls me over, walked up to my car, and asks my license, registration, does this a bit. Looks over and he says, are you a fireman? I said, yes, sir. I'm thinking, sweet. I said, this guy's going to show me a little professional courtesy. You know, I'm going to go on the merry way. You know, life will be good. He goes back to his cruiser, comes back, hands me my license and stuff, and hands me the ticket. He said, the reason I'm giving you a ticket is, he said, you ran a stop sign. I said, oh, man. I said, well, officer, I didn't see it. I said, I apologize. He pointed it out to where it was. And I said, well, why that you're here? I said, I'm lost. I said, obviously. I said, I need to go to this doctor's office. Can you tell me where it's at? He kind of looked at me, and I could tell he had the disgust look on his face. Maybe like he was having a bad day. And he just kind of pointed. He goes, it's over that way. Okay. Good enough. Fair enough. So I leave. Finally figure out where I'm going. Go to the doctor, and I get out, and I call a friend of mine, who's a sergeant there at the Lexington Police Department. And I gave him the officer's name, and he kind of chuckled. He goes, yeah. He says, he's probably one of our finest. He kind of laughed. I said, I could tell. And then he told me, he said, there wasn't a lot he could do since the ticket was already in the system and all that. He said, but he would call the guy and see if he would do me a favor. And as we were talking, he found out that I was still in my uniform. He goes, well, I'm not going to waste my time, because he don't like firemen. So that's obvious. So I got a ticket, $170 ticket. Apparently the little fella couldn't pass being a fireman test, and all he could do was be a cop. So, but
easy now.
I said I shared that story to kind of say this, is that day I was looking for grace. I was looking for him to show me a little bit of grace, but he didn't. You know, by law, he had me. By law, you know, he had me dead to rights. You know, I don't know how many times, you know, I went up down that road, like I said, 6, 10 times, so I ran that stop sign every time. So the best thing I could figure is he finally said, all right, I got to give this guy a ticket, because now he's really making me mad because he keeps running this stop sign. So, but by law, by all rights, he had me, and he had every right to give me a ticket. But, like I said, I was looking for some grace. I was looking for him to kind of look the other way. And during the Bible times, this is the same, if you kind of look at this in the Bible, is that Paul, see, Paul, he studied under a guy named Gamaliel, I think is how you pronounce it. And the way they described this individual was that he was like a Yale, a Harvard, a Princeton, and an Oxford, all kind of tied up into one. And that if you was to be able to graduate or be able to come out from underneath this man, that you were almost guaranteed a seat in a council. And Paul got a seat. He was the youngest man appointed to basically, it was kind of a Congress, kind of a Congress with the Supreme Court kind of type role, kind of rolled up into one. But Paul, he was appointed to that. And see, in Paul, when he came to law, Paul was under the influence of the Holy Spirit, and he wrote to the church of the Philippians. And when he did that, he understood the law very well, and he followed the law flawlessly. And when we can't follow the law flawlessly. We can't live that life, you know, because when we are judged by our actions, by our hearts. I can sit here and I can say one thing, but God knows my heart. If my heart is not truly in it, then it's just basically just a bunch of words. And that's the way Paul. But Paul, he followed that law, and he knew it perfectly, and he was able to say that all the religious observed in the sacrifices that he had placed his faith in the wrong things. And he finally understood that. And when he understood that's when he become to know Christ and who Christ was, and that he had missed the whole point of the law. He had missed what the purpose and what the point of the law was. And the point of the law, what it does, the law exposes sin. See, it's kind of like when you were in school, you would take the multiple choice test, and the teachers had the answer key all kind of punched out, and she had her red marker, and you would stand there, and the guy before you, maybe someone was standing before you, or would turn her test in, or somebody you didn't like, and you would stand there and you would start snickering because she was sitting there, she was marking all the answers wrong on her test, and you're kind of snickering yourself somehow. Look at all the wrong stuff that they done wrong. Look, and that's the way that sin works. Is that we as a people we kind of get off on, or people like to watch people fail. See, there's a standard, and we use to judge. That's used to judge our failure. See, it's the law that does that. So like I said, you're standing there and you're watching that teacher mark this other kid in the classroom, someone that you may not like, and you start grinning because you see that they're missing all these answers. They're getting their bad grades. See, humans, for whatever reason, they love to see other people fail. There's something about that. You can walk through Kroger's or Walmart, any of these superstores, any of these stores, and they got all these gossip magazines that are sitting there. And you see that this one is getting a divorce, or this one's got this tape that's trying to keep it from going out, or this politician is taking that, or got caught doing it. And so many people enjoy reading that because they enjoy watching other people fail. They get an enjoyment out of that. They whatever reason, they enjoy watching people fail. But see, when I started my career as a fireman, one of the things, is being a low man on a totem pole. You don't get to pick what you watch on TV. You got to kind of go along with the flow. And one of the things that they always loved watching, which I never got into, they loved watching Jerry Springer. Now, they would watch that show, and I never understood why this show was even on air, because it basically just a bunch of people would get on there and they would fight, and they would throw cheers, but again, they were getting entertainment out of watching people's failure, and I guess that's why people, that's what they were getting out of that show, was they were watching people fail and watching people's misery over and over and over and over. But if you look at Genesis chapter 9, and I believe that this would probably have been a good episode, probably there on the Jerry Springer show. You probably saw something like this on there. You see, Noah lived through the flood. He built an ark, and afterwards he began farming, and he planted his own vineyard. And Noah decided to go out and harvest some of his grapes to make some wine. And he began to, and one day he drank too much, and he ended up getting drunk, and he ended up naked in his tent. And then his son Ham come up there, and he saw his dad snoring in the tent on the floor. And he began to think. He said, "Well, that's not kosher." And he probably began to laugh. And he began to, and he looked at his dad, and then he said, even telling his brothers about it. See, and if this would happen today, or if he had the things that were around today, I'm sure he would have took pictures, posted on social media. It would have been the thing that was trending that night on Twitter. It would have been the headlines at the 5 o'clock news that this had taken place. Ham was using the law to expose his father's sin. See, we really don't know why he did this. It doesn't say why he did this. It doesn't say, you could speculate that maybe because he was the second son, that maybe he didn't feel like he was loved as much, or maybe he didn't like his job that his dad gave him on the ark. or maybe he felt like he could get one up on his dad. He had something he could dangle over his dad's head. It doesn't say. But either way, he felt justified in doing what he was doing by exposing his father's sin. See, when Noah woke up, he discovered what Ham did, and he pronounced a curse upon Ham and his son. And he had no doubt that Ham, and there's no doubt that Ham, after that point, regretted everything that he'd done. I'm sure at some point he was thinking, man, why did I do that? Why did I have to curse my father? If it wasn't for me, if it wasn't for him, I'd be fish food right now. My whole family now is living under this curse. And this fits, and as you read into the scripture with Romans, see, I believe if you look at that some of these scriptures in Romans, and basically what Ham is saying, it says, I did not want to do what I did, but I still felt compelled to do it. So, and we've been there. All of us have been there time and time again. That we know that maybe that we're not supposed to do this, we're not, or we slip up and we do this, we do that, but we fail God time and time again, and when we fail Him, we fail God. But thank God that He got us that grace. See, just like that officer, he had me dead to rights. He had me for everything that I did. It was black and white. See, the law, what it does is it does three things. Is that we're all born in sin, that all things that happen bad in this world come from sin, and then that to be exposed to sin is that man can't overcome sin by itself. Yeah. See, man tries to come up with all these different things that they can do, the self-help, the 5 steps, the 10 steps, I've even heard of people taking communion every day, which is fine if that's. But when you make that into something that is more, making it into a law, and you start missing the point of why you're doing it. I mean, I've heard people reading their Bible through the year, which is great, and I try to do that. But when we start reading the Bible just to read it, and we're not comprehending what we're reading, then basically it does us no good. When we do these things, we do these things because we want to worship God, that we want to fully give in to Him, give Him 100%. Then we look at grace, and grace covers. Grace covers all this. And see, if we go back to the story with Noah, see, I'd imagine that Ham, he was walking across the field to his brothers, and they were out in the field working. And he come up to him, and I'd imagine now I'm just kind of paraphrasing or, kind of imagining what he said. I imagine he walked up to his brothers and probably looked at it and said, hey, you know what old Mr. Holy Roller's doing right now? He said, the man right there, that's God's right-hand man, you know what he's doing? God's chosen one prophet? You know how he's acting right now? So he took him to the tent. And as they were walking up to the tent, as Shem and his brother Jehoshaphat, as they were walking up the tent, they could smell that wine. And they could hear the storm, and they began to understand what happened. And Shem immediately turned to his brother Jehoshaphat and said, go to my tent and get a robe. And they went to their dad's tent, and they walked in backwards and covered him up while looking away. And see, and that's what grace does. Grace covered us, and that's what they did. Even though their dad, even though Noah was sinning, they took that robe and they covered him. They covered that sin. They covered that. And that's what Jesus does for us. He covers that sin. That whatever the law exposes, Jesus covers it. It's kind of like if your kid is off to college, for whatever reason, maybe you're getting their bank statements and the bank calls you, you get a statement that says the bank account's overdrawn. They're in the hole. You look at it and you think, well, there's a couple different options. I can I can just look the other way and ignore it and let them learn their lesson, that they need to be better with their finances. Or I can take and I can put money in the account. I can send them a nasty text and fuss at them. Or I can just simply transfer money into the account, cover the overdraft fee, and just take care of it myself just as a parent would do. And later on, when you see them, you say, hey, your account's overdrawn, or when you talk to them, you tell them their account's overdrawn, they're like, when they break down and they tell you, I don't have any money, I don't know what I want to do, and you interrupt them, and you tell them, it's already been taken care of. I covered it. I covered it. And see, and that's the same thing Christ does for us. He covered our failures. Everything it's exactly what Christ did through Jesus Christ. Long before we knew that we needed grace, He had an ample deposit. Before we knew we needed a Savior, He had one. The Bible tells us that when we ask for mercy, He says, I've already given it. See, people think that they have to do something, but when they really don't have to do anything. All they have to do is just believe. Just believe in what Christ did at that cross. Fully give your life to Him, and everything else will be taken care of. That He'll give you everything that you need. He'll cover all your failures. He'll cover everything from the past. See, the law and grace are two opposite sides. See, the law and grace show us complete renovation of who God is. And a father makes sure that his child, that the debt is paid for, just like Christ did for us. He made sure that debt was paid for. But see, also, there's a law. The law exposes, grace covers, but then Jesus transforms. That's what the law covers. The law exposes, grace covers, and Jesus transforms us. Now see, and that's what He wants. See, that's the original struggle right here with Paul. See, in Romans, he wanted to do good, but he couldn't. Instead, he did evil. He didn't want to do evil. He didn't want to do it no more, but he struggled with it, just like we do every day. There's that struggle. And the law exposes that struggle every day, and grace covers that every day. But see, God don't want us to be in that vicious cycle. He wants us to eventually, He wants to transform us. He wants to make us into a new creature. He wants us to move above and beyond that. See, I was told this story. There was a platoon leader in the military, and his guys were out. I guess I don't know what they call it. They had some time off, and he gets a call, and one of his guys is sitting at the local jail. So he's got to go, he's got to pick this kid up. He gets there and he asks the officer, he says, what happened? He said apparently he had been writing some bad checks at the store on base. I think they call it a PX, I think is what they call it. But he had wrote some bad checks there, over $1,000 worth of checks that he had wrote that were bad. He goes in and he gets this old boy. Now this kid, he was just a farm kid. He had never been off the farm his entire life. As a matter of fact, he never left the little county where he was from. His sergeant gets him in the vehicle and he said, son, he said, what happened? He said, man, he said, sir, he says, I don't understand. He says, I've got his checkbook, and he says, I've got all sorts of checks in here. He said, the bank gave me all these checks. He said, so I'd assume the money's in the bank. That's why they gave me all these checks. And he didn't understand that he couldn't just keep writing checks, that he had to have money in the bank to cover these checks. See, he didn't understand that. And of course, that sergeant was probably sitting there with his hand on his head going, oh, Lord. But see, that's the way God is. See, God doesn't want us just to keep writing checks over and over to pay for our mistakes. See, He eventually wants us to. He covers us with grace, and the blood will never run out. God doesn't want us to keep writing the checks. He wants us to change from the inside and out. See, if that, I'm sure that was an honest, that kid, he didn't know any better. Like I said, he had never left the farm. He didn't know life existed probably past that little town. So, here he was given a checkbook. He didn't understand how it worked. But eventually, he was, I'm sure someone was sitting down and they showed him how it worked, and they eventually would expect him not to keep doing it. And see, that's the way Christ is. See, eventually Christ wants us to move above and beyond that. He wants to transform us. See, in John chapter 6, it says Jesus is getting into one of his famous famous arguments with the religious leader right here of his times. And see, and he's making an incredible statement right here in John 6:51-8. It says, I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whosoever eats this bread will live forever. This bread is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world. And then the Jews began to argue and among themselves, says, how can this man give his flesh to eat? Jesus said to him, verily, truly, I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whosoever eat my flesh, drink my blood, has eternal life, and I will rise up them at the last day. For my flesh is real, my real food, and my blood is real drink. Whosoever eat my flesh, drink my blood, remains in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, I live because the Father, so the one who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, and your ancestors ate the manna and died, and whosoever feed on this bread will live forever. Well, let's just think about what that said there. It said, I want to enter into you. I want to change you. I want your every moment, every day to be focused on me. That's what Jesus. See, that's what he wants. And see, the more and more that we can make our lives center around him, the more and more that he can reveal to us, he can use us, he can put us in places that we need to be. But see, he can't use us. He can't put us in situations that he needs to use us in if we're not willing to serve him wholeheartedly. If we're only halfway in. See, we need to be all in to him. We need, and like I said, instead of sitting back and looking at other people's failures and looking back at how we failed and how this one failed, is that we simply show them grace just like Christ did. And that we love on them, and that we help them, and we encourage them to get to the next level. That we encourage them, and we kind of take them under our wing, and we help them, and then eventually they'll help someone else, and then so on. It keeps going on down the line. See, a person who is lost in Jesus, that person, when you look at that person, all you will see is Jesus. And see, and that's what we need to be, is that we need to be completely lost in Jesus. Where when someone looks at our lives, looks at everything that we're in, everything about us, and all they see is Jesus. All they see is love. All they see is that mercy, that grace. All they see is Jesus. And that's what we need to be. That we need to be completely lost in him. That we need to be completely consumed in him. See, Jesus, Jesus is the perfect balance between grace and law. It's because of Jesus, when the law exposes sin, we're covered by grace, but we have that grace because of Jesus and what he done for us. Let's pray. Dear Father, Lord, I just thank you. I just praise you, Lord, for another day. Lord, I thank you for your grace. I thank you for your mercy. I thank you for the opportunity to share your word, Lord. I thank you for coming down and opening up the ears, Lord, and letting them receive what it is that you wanted to receive tonight, Lord. Lord, just give them the grace and the mercy that they're looking for, Lord. Lord, just let them be able to show that grace and mercy to other people. Lord, let them be completely consumed and lost in you, Lord. Lord, people see them, Lord, that they see you, Lord. Lord, just be in my life, Lord. Let me be that example. Let me be the one that is completely consumed, Lord. Let people see my life, Lord. They see who I am, Lord. Just let them see you through me. Lord, I just thank you and I just praise you, Lord, for every opportunity, Lord, that you have put my way. Lord, you have done so much in 2019. We can pray and keep going by the grace, Lord. And I'm excited to see what's next. I'm excited to take the next step, to go through the next door, Lord. Every day seems like it is a new adventure, Lord. It's a new thing, Lord, that you have for me. Lord, I just ask that you just touch each and every person here, Lord. Give them the anointing, a blessing, Lord, as they go throughout the week, Lord. Touch Pastor and Sherry, Lord, as they're at the campground, Lord, as they're doing your work, and with the servants of God, Lord, that you just give them physical and mental touch, Lord, that they can not only, Lord, that they can have a physical refreshing, Lord, in their body, Lord, that they can get through this week, Lord, with mental problems and no problems, Lord. Lord, just guide them, Lord. Let them be a light, Lord. Just touch this church, Lord, as it's moving forward, as it's growing. Lord, just touch it, Lord, as we're expanding, Lord, as we're adding different things, different services, Lord. Just touch the Hispanic service, Lord. Lord, as you're doing so much in that service, Lord, just touch them. Continue to let them grow. Lord, we just thank you and just praise you